Hey guys, it's Pete from Beef Anxiety here. Welcome in today's episode. I appreciate y'all being here so much. Let's talk about a few things real quick. The Pete vs. Anxiety Team Anxiety Facebook group. Are you a part of it? You're not? What are you waiting for? The link's down here in the description down below, or go to Facebook and search Pete vs. Anxiety. Then look for the Team Anxiety Team page and join it today. Why not? You can join and help. It'll be great. Yeah, like right now. Hurry up. Stop what you're doing, pause this video, go do it right now. But anyways, let's also talk about the Pete vs. Anxiety YouTube page. If you're here right now, you're probably following it most likely. If not, head on over there, subscribe, be sure to like and comment on the videos and let me know, because all that stuff really helps, guys. I really appreciate it. And help me break the stigma that mental health is talked about enough. But anyways, guys, let's get in today's episode. I'll have a great one. Thank you so much again. And as I always say, don't ask how your day is. Ask how your mental health is today.
Guys, welcome into another exciting episode of Pete vs. Anxiety. My guest today is a writer, a grief mentor, and a mental health advocate who helps grievers, caregivers, and creative transform pain into purpose through story, presence, and core. Please welcome, it's Ava, right?
Ayla.
Ayla. I don't know why the hell I'm thinking something else. Anyways, Ayla Casey. Ayla, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me, Pete.
Anyway, so why don't you tell me a little bit more about yourself? I mean, I could give you an intro, but it's better when it comes directly from you.
I'd be happy to. I think this would resonate with a lot of people. I never imagined myself on this path, but here I am, and I am gonna make the most of it and create as much light as possible. So, how did I get here? I fast forward, or let's say rewind back to pre-COVID. I was in a relationship, in love, had met my soulmate, and we went through COVID like everyone. It was a very trying, weird, awkward time, but we managed to make it through. But in the summer of 2021, my husband was diagnosed with an aggressive form of colon cancer. And it was the most intense experience of my life, but not in the way that you might think, where it's like, I mean, it was harrowing and it was terrifying and it was tragic, but it was also kind of the most beautiful time of my life as well.
Yeah.
And I found that we transformed this really dark period into a moment where we were able to create a lot of light and a lot of goodness and a lot of advocacy work that continues to live on through his story and the work that I still do today.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm really happy I'm grateful and honored to be able to do this work.
I I appreciate it. I know it's hard. Is he no longer with us, unfortunately?
He passed away 2 years after he was
Okay. Well, I'm
diagnosed.
so sorry to hear that. I mean, I'm sure he's still with you in spirit and everything like that, and he appreciates what you're still doing, pushing on, even though, it's been a probably rough 2 years for you, but you're still out here doing what you're doing and all that kind of stuff, sharing the story. And, everybody, I'm sure, appreciates everything you're doing. And it's great to have people like yourself that come on that go through these kind of things, unfortunately, that are willing to come on and share their stories and, push through things and try and do something turn something into darkness into light, basically.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think part of what motivates me to do this work is to create a model that pain and grief doesn't have to be all darkness,
Yeah.
like life is hard enough as it is, like we're going to go through hard things no matter what. But there is a path to create space for joy and gratitude to exist alongside that pain.
Yeah, I love it. I do. I love it because when it comes to grief, I think it's so hard for people for the next steps afterwards, especially, someone that experiences it or somebody that knows somebody has, that's a hard conversation to have with people afterwards. Cause it's like, what do you say to someone though? Like you could say any number of things, but you don't know what to say to somebody because you're not sure what their mindset is at that time. Obviously they just lost a loved one or, relative or somebody very close to them or, whatever the situation is. And then it's hard because it's like, what can you say to somebody that's okay, that's not going to upset them, and I think that's a real big question a lot of people have.
I think the most important thing to remember is that like to take the onus off of yourself to try to fix this, because there's really nothing that can fix it. There are no
Yeah.
words. There's really no gestures either that can fix it. I mean, um it's amazing when people show up with support, like, bringing meals by, and thoughtful gestures, but also it doesn't have to be that either. It can be as simple as just sitting with somebody and letting them talk and hearing what they have to say, and being curious about how they feel. It's a very isolating experience to be in grief, and it can be even more isolating when your loved ones feel awkward around you.
Yeah, I could see that though. I could see them getting awkward because they're not sure. I think it's more because they're not sure what to say, or they don't want to upset you. But like you said, you just sometimes you just want to let it out and just have somebody listen to what you have to say, or do, just something like that, or just remember them in a better light than versus just everything had to be so doom and gloom kind of thing. And I think that's really it's really powerful because a lot of times people, run into these things and then they don't do anything. But you're doing the opposite. You're actually doing something with this. You're taking and making sure people remember his memory as you continue pushing through and doing all this stuff for other people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think part of it too is, and this is, grief is a very personal experience.
Hmm.
So, I invite everyone to feel their way through it, and, not feel like there's anything wrong with them because they're not, it doesn't look like it does for somebody else for them.
Yeah.
Um, but I would just really encourage that curiosity and openness to explore what it is that they're going through. And another thing that I would say is, I think a lot of times people are afraid to like mention the person who's passed away, or even if it's a different kind of grief, like, it could be a divorce, or a lost job, or even terminal illness. Like, there's a lot of things that create grief in the world that we live in, and I think people are often afraid to talk about the thing because they don't want to upset the person. And what I found is it's really just the opposite. Like, in my case, there's really nothing that anybody can say that's going to upset me more than you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
nobody has that much power over the situation. Um, and really, it's quite cathartic to get to talk about my husband, and to get to share stories, and relive happy memories.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what my view in it too is honestly it's the same thing. It's like, why be so doom and gloom? They wouldn't want you to do that. They don't want you to sit around and be upset about them being gone. Just remember the person for who they were, the great things they've done, the different accolades they have, like May's a rough month for my wife because she lost her grandfather, but he's done some incredible things. This guy was on the Time Life magazine, his ship that he was on and all that kind of stuff. And he's actually mentioned in there and things like that too. I've never got to meet him when we met, unfortunately, but he sounded like a great person. And it's like when she gets really down, I'm just like, do you think really this is what he wants you to do? Like, he doesn't want all that. He just wants you to continue living life. Remember who he was. Because we have a little case in our living room where we have all his stuff in there, and we can go by and see him and everything else. He's right there. His ashes are in there and all that kind of cool stuff. And I think it's really interesting to see what people do after that point. It's like a lot of people start shutting down and just start stepping away from things because, I like you said, some people, that's what I think of people think. It's just like they don't want to talk about it. Me, I'm like, let's just talk about it. Why not? Let's keep talking about the person because if we stop talking about them, then we'll forget about them. Let's continue the memory on and talking about these people. You see all these different war memorials and all these other things that mention all these people's names. You know why they're there? It's because we don't want to forget these people. And same thing for your husband. You're just continue pushing on, talking about enjoying remembering the great times you guys had together, versus the doom and gloom parts of everything.
It's so important. I can't emphasize that enough, to articulate the things that we're feeling, and to
Yeah.
have the space to be able to do that. I mean, obviously there's a lot of different ways to create that space. You can, in a therapeutic setting, which is a great outlet, but also, in your community, and in your closest relationships with your family, with the people that you spend the most time with, like, to be able to let your feelings, let your grief speak, and listen to what it has to say, And it creates this sort of mirror where you're able to see what it is that you're feeling, and then also be a little bit more objective about it. It's like, well, wait a minute. I don't know if I agree with that. Like maybe
Yeah.
I don't agree with that, and I can take steps to change it, you know?
Yeah, definitely. No, I agree. I think it's actually a real positive outlook to it, you know. So and it's I think that's the part that people just got to get past is, you know, unfortunately they're gone. And it's just, you know, people take time to grieve in their own times and ways and things they do, you know, and it's just I think it's always a touchy subject, just like suicide would be a touchy subject too for a lot of people. You know, people just don't like when they start talking about it, people get real uncomfortable. But I don't know why. It's like it's a conversation. We're just talking about, you know, whatever the topic of the subject is, you know, it's not to make anybody feel any weirder or, you know, make things awkward between people and things like that, you know. And I think that we need to stop doing that kind of stuff. I think we need to start regularizing just mentioning people, you know, talking about them, remembering them, you know, because there's nothing wrong with that. It's a great thing, you know. Why not enjoy the thing, the great, remember the great times you have versus the bad times you have with people, or you know, whatever situation you're in.
I think that I had two things that I wanted to say.
Okay.
Um, the second one is escaping me, but the first one is that there's a lot of opportunity, I think. Oh, I remember the second one now. When I think that discomfort is a signal that comes, like it's a messenger, you know, and it doesn't have to mean anything bad. It's like something to dive in and be curious about. Like, well,
Yeah.
what about this makes me uncomfortable? Like,
Yeah.
maybe that is something that that can be a teacher for me, and let me, you know, learn more about myself and how I move through the world. And honestly, that's a superpower,
Yeah.
to give yourself that space. And the other thing that I wanted to say, and this was kind of connected to what you were sharing about your wife's grandfather, I think in moments of times where grief feels heavy, and I'll emphasize that I don't believe that grief is a linear journey and by any stretch of the imagination. Um, in times where it feels heavy, it can be really meaningful to do something that honors that person. You
Yeah.
know, my that like something that really like lights up a memory between you and that person. And like, you know, for me, when I go to restaurants, I'll always order the things that my husband would have ordered, because it helps me remember the look on his face when he got to have his favorite foods, or, you know, the things that he would say, like the things that are like really subtle that, you know, a
Yeah.
really intimate somebody that's in a really intimate relationship would like see and feel with their loved one. And that's just one example, but there's many, you know.
No, no, I agree. I remember the time with my godmother who I lost last month. We remember the time when she spent all this time with my mom. She didn't like my mom at all, but she spent a lot of time with her and made me a Ninja Turtles costume when I was a kid. Like she sewed the whole thing. I had the full get up and everything, the shell and all of it. And I remember those, and I tell people about it all the time because, you know, me and her were like really close. She was like a second mom to me. And when she passed, it was just like I did the same thing. I went and said my goodbyes and things like that. I, you know, and I just make sure that I keep remembering all the great times that we had together, you know. So I'll watch like Ninja Turtles, and that's what I'll start thinking of as, you know, as a kid, she made those costumes for me and my brother, and you know, things like that. Other things that she would do, and then other stuff my uncle would do too, because I was really close to him, and we lost him a couple of years ago to diabetes, unfortunately. You know, it's just like there's little memories you have, and it's little flashbacks that go, you know, and you know, you get the different like we used to have those little jams with the little jars, and it used to have the dinosaurs, and he used to like emphasize like, oh look, it's dinosaur jam, and you know, things like that he would do. So like I go out and get like the different stuff like that help me remember. It's similar to what you do with your husband's, you know, memories. You know, you're getting the different stuff at the restaurant, thinking about what his response was to it. You know, it's the same thing I do when I pick it up and have that same nostalgia feeling about it when, you know, I see those kind of things, or I see like these different collector's items, because he was a massive collector. This guy had a collection, it was crazy. But that's the things I remember about him, because he was always a big collector of things. He always had all these really cool stuff. He always show us all the time. So anytime I see that kind of like nostalgic stuff, you know, it always brings back those really happy memories and times, you know, when we used to hang out with him all the time and go do all these different things, and you know, see him and spend time at his house, and you know, and it was always a great time. No matter what, he always made it a blast every time we went over there, regardless of what we were doing.
I think those are such beautiful ways to honor somebody who is so meaningful to you. And it sounds like you are really savoring the joy that existed between you all and that you shared. And I think that is a really important point to remember too, is that when you are, ritualizing something or even just sort of informally allowing a memory to move through you, being really present with it
Yeah.
um, and letting it have levity and letting it be in motion and trying really hard not to fixate on the pain of the reality that they're no longer here.
Yeah, yeah, and it helps a lot too, and things like that. And especially with her passing recently, it's just real rough, man. When it hit, it's just like it was rough for a few days, but it was like after that, I was like, this is not what she'd want. She didn't even want a funeral. She was like, no, I don't want any of this other stuff. She's very strict about what she wanted. I'd laugh because it was just like, yeah, that was her 100%. And she herself had like little quirks and things like that too, which are always great things I always remember and always see, and a lot of different things. Whenever I see Hello Kitty, I always remember because that's like one of her big things was for whatever reason she was big into Hello Kitty, Mickey Mouse, Garfield. Like, she had like these little small things I do remember that so anytime I see like a Garfield thing, it always brings back memories like that too. All these things trigger all these little keepsake moments or the precious moments where the thing that monster thing she used to collect all the time. It may not be valuable to anybody else. With her, it was like that was it. That was her thing. She loved it. So every time I went and saw her, I always get her a new one, and different ones that she didn't have. And there was always the fun about it too, was like trying to get the ones that she didn't have because that meant so much to her.
Yeah, that's really special. I'm curious if you're able to, like, if you sometimes think about what she would say to
Yeah.
certain things. Yeah.
That too, yeah. I think about that a lot. A lot of stuff she would say, and my grandmother, my mom's side too. I think a lot of things she would say too, because I spent a lot of time with her as well. But she was always the person that always got me though. That was the one thing I do remember about her though. Like the most obscure things she said that other people would be like, "What?" And me and her would get, and things like that. And she'd always send me these really interesting things, and like every time I'm like always thought about it, I was like, man, she really got it because I was like, I'm a real random person when it comes to like gifts. I would just tell people like all these secret Santa things. I'm like, just whatever you think. I'm great. I love gag gifts and things like that. So people try to always one up each other. And I've had some pretty extreme things that were, I've been gifted some very interesting things over the years, needless to say. But it's like it always makes me think of her all the time too in that moment as well too. So just think about some of the things she would always tell us and all the different stories she would tell us about when my mom was a kid and things like that. My mom would tell me stories about her when she was a kid. I always remember them all getting together. It's like a scene out of like the opening of Roseanne. They all be sitting around the table drinking or whatever, or doing whatever, playing cards or whatever. And we're all just kind of cutting in and out kind of thing. And it always makes me think of that too. Whenever I see those old school Roseanne the intro to the show, it always makes me think about my grandmother, my mom, and all them, because that's what they used to do: get together, play cards, and things like that. And they tell the wildest stories. And my mom would always say these things about my grandmother. Oh no, and grandma used to do this, and my grandma would just start laughing. No, I never did that. I never did that kind of stuff. And my mom would do the same thing too. She's like, I never did any of that stuff. I'm like, what do you mean I was there for these things? Don't say that it didn't happen. I remember these things happening. Come on now, stop.
Yeah, well, memories can be selective from time to time.
Right?
I am curious if in these losses that sound like they've been pretty significant for you,
Yeah.
if you felt like it has been like a bit like identity shifting for you, like
Um,
without having that,
I think
that person
so.
who always saw you or always got you.
A lot of it too happened. Well, part of it, yes, because a lot of times when they got me and things like that, I shifted personalities. But it's ever since I started the show, though, from the beginning, anybody that's been watching this from the beginning will notice too that a big change in me as well as I started discovering more about myself.
Mhm.
I was always the middle child in a group of 7 people, and like I felt like I never had a voice, but now I have a voice now because of this show that people are listening to what I'm saying, and it makes me laugh when people tell me, "Oh, you sound intelligent." I'm like, "Huh? This is how I've always sounded. What do you mean? You never listened to anything I said. I was like that annoying little brother." I really was a little annoying brother for most of them, that you didn't listen to. You didn't hear what my thoughts are. Now I have a voice and a platform for this voice. now all of a sudden y'all want to listen to me and hear what I have to say. And then all of a sudden now it's intelligent, as you say, but it's like, that's just my thoughts. Just the thoughts that go through my head every day.
Um, I mean, there's a lot there's a lot of parallels, at least, that I experience along the same lines. What was the time? How long has the show been on the air? What's the timing
Less
there?
than a year. We July 15th. Oh no, sorry, September 15th would be 1 year. So we're about couple months away from a full year.
Okay. And if you don't mind my asking, what prompted you to start this show?
It was my own mental health journey went on. I for years have denied that I had problems, and then now reflecting back on it, I noticed it did. So like one day I had a podcast prior to this. It was called Pete's Corner Story. It was something fun I was just doing with a friend of mine. Um, okay, conversation got a little out of hand later on. So I stopped and decided to refocus what I was doing. So I was sitting there, and one day it just hit me. It's like, why not Pete versus anxiety? Like, I don't know where the idea came from. I was just sitting there. I had finished doing a therapy session. I was sitting there thinking about it. Like, I was trying to think of a new show because I didn't want to be off for too long. I wanted to try and do something. So I took a month off, and then all of a sudden it just kind of fell upon me. It's just like Pete versus anxiety. It was like, oh, okay, cool. So what I did is I had the original logo of the show was me doing a goofy pose that my wife had uh, done some like photo editing to it and things like that. And it was something I sent her one time, just some goofy thing I was doing at the time. And it because me and her had a disagreement prior to me getting some help. It's like, some kind of interaction we had where I got so upset for nothing. She didn't do anything at all. And all of a sudden I just went off the handle completely. Don't even know what it was. Don't know what triggered it. And I've always had these kind of rage outburst type things happen. And it's just the way she responded. It was just something in me clicked that said, hey man, I got to do something before this gets out of hand. And as I started going to therapy and started learning more about it, I was wondering more and more if people were talking about these kind of things. I was like, I'm curious to know more about what I deal with in myself, like depression, ADHD, and all these other kind of things. I'm wondering what people are talking about. So I started searching podcasts, and a lot of them are just like doctors and things like that. And I'm like, where are the people I having real conversations at? And I think that's where it started forming from there. And then the show idea, the name hit me, and I was like, Pete versus anxiety. And it was because my wife and I's whole argument is why this even started becoming into an even existence. And then I took her pictures, and that was the original logo. Was Pete versus anxiety was on there, and it had that picture in the background because it was so sentimental. Because it was something I had sent her and she had done for me and sent it back or whatever, and I really liked it. So it started like that, and then it kind of evolved into something else after that. Because I think about about November. I had talked to somebody in November. I interviewed a woman named Melanie, and she was an energy alchemist, and it started opening my eyes to a lot of energy stuff, and started pointing out some things that I didn't realize. That I'm an empath, and that I'm really sensitive to energy, because like I couldn't explain these weird events of things that were happening. So when we got into it, conversation-wise deep, we got real deep, and then she started making sense of a lot of things, and I was like, what, this makes a lot of sense now. Maybe that's what I was experiencing. And then ever since then, you just kind of see me start, like, my whole mindset changed a lot from there, because I started learning more and stuff, so I kept going down different rabbit holes. So every guest I would meet bring something else to the table. I'd start going to look down that avenue of things that they had told me about, and I start learning things as I go. And then fast forward to where we're now, man, I've had 100 plus episodes of this now live, and we're not even a year into the show.
That is so cool. Thank you for sharing that story. And I feel like the first sort of spark that I heard was when you talked about it just sort of came to you, Pete versus
Yeah.
anxiety. And I really believe that those types of sparks that we receive are messages from a higher power, or I mean,
Mm-hmm.
whatever resonates with you.
Yeah.
And I really find it to be like the heart of meaningful work to follow those threads. And it seems like for you, it's given you a space to really cultivate and craft your voice.
Yeah.
And voice work is something that I'm deeply passionate about as well, and is a big part for me about grief tending, which is what we touched on a little bit earlier, is to
Yeah.
let your feelings speak, let them be heard. And it's a big difference to listen to your feelings versus to react to them.
Yeah.
And reacting is like pouring gasoline on them, like what you
Yeah.
experienced with your wife.
Yeah.
And And I think that's incredible. I also want to just say that the voice is like a muscle. The more that you use it and the more you sort of like craft your voice and like get comfortable with the way that you sound and the way that it feels even in your body, like the resonance of when you're speaking, you can feel it like in your throat and in your chest and sometimes in your belly. Like those are things that will give you confidence and give you like power and into how to shape your voice. And it sounds like through this journey, you've really shaped something powerful.
Yeah, I'm on a mission to make mental health a normal conversation. And since day one, it's what it's been like. Now, a lot has changed since day one. The intro has changed. The different stuff I've done has changed. And the way I go about things. I talk more about my podcast now. At first, I wouldn't really say much about it to anybody. But now I've got so much confidence. I can walk to anybody and just start talking about, hey, yeah, I do a podcast on the side. And people are just like, oh, what kind of podcast do you? And I go into talking about everything. And, I have more confidence when I speak about it because I think at first it was a little, still trying to find my voice a little bit. And then when I hit about November, when I met Melanie, that's kind of where things started changing for me a lot. A lot of things changed. And then I decided, then go from a weekly show to opening it up 5 days a week to see what other conversations I can have and other things I can discover as I go. And, I get into all these really fulfilling conversations with a lot of people and I meet different people and network with different people. It's I get to meet a lot of people. So it's nice. I get to feel that, that people I get to do the people thing. I get to meet a lot of people, like network a lot of people because I can talk to anybody now, But at first, it was like I really wouldn't say much about the podcast. It wasn't that I was ashamed. It was just more like I was just kind of still figuring out where I was going with this, as I started going, because it filled up pretty fast. I'm not gonna lie. Before the third week of the show was already out to the end of the year already, and I started in September, so we're talking like end of December. I already had the show completely booked, solid for weekly days on Mondays, and then I added an extra time slot, which is the one we're on now because I'm a part of a podcasting network, which I got offered that, which in like 3 days of posting the idea out there, it was just like everything started falling into place really fast. And I was just like, whoa, hold on. And prior to that, I had accepted, faith as well. And it was something different. And then just something after that, it's just everything just started clicking and stuff started just falling into pieces, started coming into place and things like that. Just everything started just kind of going on its way. And I feel like the universe sends people or puts people in my path for reasons, and, that way every person I meet is somebody that I met for some reason, and then we have engaging conversations and then we go from there, And then usually what happens from there is that I'll usually network with I have other podcasters I talk to all the time. So we're always suggesting different guests that we meet and think to each other, hey, listen, I talked to this person, I think they'll be great for you. And I love it. It's great because I get to meet I have these new friends that are all doing the same thing I'm doing, and we have something in common and I love it. Every time I hit record, it's just every conversation has been great. I don't think I've yet to have a conversation where I feel like it just didn't go well at all.
I love that you're feeling the feeling the like call from the universe. Like it's like, each step you take, it's sort of lighting the path one more, like a few more steps in front of you.
Yeah.
I definitely have experienced that myself. And I think when you start listening, it becomes sort of mesmerizing just how much more there is to hear.
Yeah.
Um, and how much support and guidance there is. I also want to name how inspiring it is that you are sharing, inspiring and important it is that you share your story in the way that you do in such an accessible format because it's giving people a model, whether you realize it or not. It's a model that they can see themselves in and reflect back on and ideate around as to like a situation in their life and how the way that you've gone about yours might apply in their own circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah, I've met a lot of people too. I've been mentioned on podcasts, which is I think was really funny. The other day I was listening to one and I heard my name get mentioned and I just almost fell out of the chair. I was like, whoa, hold on. They're talking about me. And it's still so surreal when you hear your name being mentioned. You're like, there's millions of people that could be listening to this right now. They're hearing your name being mentioned by somebody else saying, oh, hey, do you know Pete versus anxiety? Was how the conversation went. So these ladies didn't know I knew both of them I interviewed on one person's show and I interviewed the other person. So the person that was interviewing the other one was the one that I had interviewed. And she's like, yeah, have you met him before? And it actually happened in December too. I found out that another guest I had that me and another person had, we didn't realize, and we didn't know each other at that time, that she had mentioned my name. She didn't mention me by name, but she mentioned how I always ask people, how's your mental health? And she said, yeah, I was on this great show. And she said the girl that when I had finally met her, she's like, yeah, she was mentioning your name. She was talking about how she had a great time and things like that. And I was like, oh, okay, this is, something new to me. People are talking about me. Or, when people say like they listen to it, like I've had random people come in and go, hey, I like what you're doing. I'm like, huh? What? It's like, oh, your podcast. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. I have a podcast. At first, it was like that. Now it's just like, hey, don't listen. I appreciate it. I'm glad you're listening. Hell, even my older brother listens to this. I didn't even realize he was so invested. He's actually the one that, had created the new logo I have in the background now. He reached out to me one day and said, we need to, he was real funny about how he communicates, because he was just like, hey, we need to change the logo. We need to change it up here. What do you think of this one? And then sent me the picture I have now. And I was like, yeah, man, I love it. That's awesome. That's sweet. And then the screen back here, normally I have the screen set up differently, but I'm using the side room because my daughter visits on the summertime. So I'm getting ready for her to come. Or normally I have the full black screen, everything. He donated the screen too, and things like that as well. So it's been kind of interesting because me and him really haven't had a relationship since we were younger. Like we talk here and there and things like that. But ever since doing this show, it's like, it was just a random message one day. He was just like, hey, and I was like, okay. And he just started sending me all this stuff. He's like, oh, listen, you need a better setup too. And all of a sudden he's already got it sent. Oh, here's the tracking label. Here it comes. And I was like, okay, yeah. I was like, what's going on here? This is weird. Like, we don't have a conversation more than hello or hi when we see each other at a family gathering. But now it's like, you're listening to this show? He goes, yeah, I'm listening. I listen to it all the time. I'm like, okay, it's so surreal though when you hear people say they're listening to it. But I love it though. It's great now. And like now I'd like take it and run with it. I'm like, hey, that's awesome, And then all these people that mention my name, it's I think it's funny because a lot of people are like, oh yeah, well, I was on Pete versus Anxiety. I'm like, okay, now it's getting a little different when you hear your name again. But that first time was just so it caught me off guard. I was like, oh, okay, they're talking about me now. All right, this is interesting. This is something new here, And it's interesting to see how much effect you have on people that you meet as you go, and it's been great because everybody that I ran into have said, different things about it. And it's just like, oh, well, I'm so happy with what you're doing. And all I'm doing is having a conversation. Like, because my thought process is like, we could sit here and drill questions all day, but I'm not Don King, and you're sure as well not here to answer 20,000 questions. When you have a genuine conversation with the people, like the conversation goes way differently versus, those other things. So.
Totally. Authenticity and, just letting things flow and unfold organically really goes a very, very long way. And I think that ties in really nicely with how you started the conversation between us when we're talking about like what do you say to someone who's grieving?
Yeah.
And it's like you don't have to perform, you don't have to try so hard, like just show up.
Yeah, exactly.
And
That's funny because that's what I told my guest this morning. He was like, the guy named Casey I interviewed. He was like, I'm kind of nervous, man. I'm like, listen, man, I've done this over 100 times. I'm going to tell you right now, just show up and be you, man, because people can read through crap, man. Just be authentic, man. I got this. If I wasn't as good as a host as I am, this conversation went down hell in a handbasket real quick. But I'm, good at making sure, like if people need to take a break, or they're upset or something, I'll come in, I'll start saying something, and things like that. Because if this is goes to the audio side, they're not going to know what's going on. They're not visually watching this right now because I haven't figured out how all that works on that side still. But they're not seeing that, so like you have to make sure you're prepared for those kind of things. And like I was telling you off air about the gentleman when he was telling me there, I was like, I had to be ready for that. Like it was happening in the moment. I got to be ready to go, and things like that. And I feel like with the conversational setting, man, you get better answers out of people. And you see like a lot of people enjoy it. They're like, this is so relaxing. This is not like anything I've done. I'm like, well, that's great. I'm glad because I try not to be like everybody else. I like to be just Pete. That's me. I'm not anybody else. I'm not, no hats off to everybody else that does it, their own little way. That's great. And I tell people to be their authentic self all the time, because if not, and that is one thing. I mean, where I did discuss, she said, if you're going to do this, she said, you better be better you're authentic from the beginning. Like, let's be honest. She said, you better be fucking authentic, because if not, people are going to read through bullshit fast. That was one of the main things she did punch home to me, was like, if you're going to touch this subject, She's like, I want you to know that you need to be serious and you need to make sure that you are authentic, because if not, people are going to read through bullshit really quick. And she's like, she's real harsh to other people. It seems harsh, but it's real honesty. And that's what I needed. And then in the beginning, it was a lot of criticization about it, because she was like, no, you got to be more authentic. You got to be authentic. You got to be authentic. And she kept drilling that home to me, because, if not, she's like, people are just not going to take you serious. They're going to just laugh at you and be like, whatever. Now she even talks about it to people. Even one of her coworkers watched the show and is always asking her, well, who is he interviewing? She's like, I don't know. Let me message him. I'll ask him, things like that. It's so funny.
Yeah, well, I think that is also a muscle as well, is finding authenticity. I can say, like, I spent many years of my life like wanting to feel authentic, but not really knowing what that meant.
Yeah.
And it was a journey and it was a process, and a big part of it is trust, like
Yeah.
trusting your inner voice, and trusting that just being here is enough, like you don't have to perform, just
Yeah.
say what's on your mind, and show up with your full presence and listen, and hear what comes up inside.
Right. So let's shift the conversation a little bit. Alchemy for Human Hearts. What exactly is that about now? Would you want to go ahead and plug that for everybody? Let them know exactly what it is. Is that what you started before your husband or after he had unfortunately passed?
It was after he passed. Alchemy for Human Hearts is about the innate power that we all have within ourselves to transform and to grow. As I had mentioned earlier in the conversation, we're all going to go through hard things in life. It's
Yeah.
not going to be avoidable, but we have power to experience joy and beauty alongside the things that are going to be hard. And I think a big part of it is like not trying to make it not hard. It
Yeah.
is hard. And there's two types of hard, I guess. There's hard things that life gives us, and then there's hard things that we give ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So recognizing the difference between the two of those, and what you have agency and power over and what you don't. A big part of the work I do is voice work. Like, we've been touching on all of the key things in our conversation here, with your journey with cultivating your voice and giving yourself space to grow. In a lot of ways, I think, like, we are like we will take up the amount of space that we have, and so if we don't give ourselves very much space to take up, we won't take up any space. But when we start exploring space and learning how to interact in the space, like with other people, like it's a really beautiful unfolding of the human spirit. And it's probably what I would say is like the greatest gift that anyone could ever give themselves, is to truly get to know who they are. And in a situation of loss, and grief, it's often a place where people find themselves, like, with an identity rupture, where they don't really know who they are anymore after this, big event has sort of shattered their sense of reality. And there's really, at least in my life and my experience in my context, it wasn't an option for me to go on and to try to be who I thought I was before my husband passed away. Like, I don't even know that person anymore.
Yeah.
And so the only option was to get to know who I am now.
I could feel that 100%. I feel like that's the same way it was for me too. After that conversation, it's like the old Pete died and the new Pete came through fruition, like the things I used to do, the things I used to say, and a lot of things I started looking at things from a different aspect, and I had a fresh new window of just curiosity of new things, because I'm always curious, and I know that's a lot of what comments people make is that how curious I am about things. And I said, yeah, I am. I'm interested in every conversation I get into. Hell, I went for an hour long conversation about neuroscience, and a lot of people didn't even think I could keep up with that conversation, but we were firing back and forth the whole time, having a great time. And it's I can feel that. I understand Rosette with that 100%. I feel that one 100%, because that's what it was like. It's like now I'm becoming a different person, because now I have a different mindset, and different things. I start exploring different avenues, and no conversation is untouched in this podcast at all. I've had conversations about breast cancer and things like that, like because I read a book about a breast cancer memoir that someone had wrote, and I read the whole thing front to back, cover to cover, and I was telling people I was reading, and I got a lot of strange looks. I'm like, I don't give a fuck what you think. I'm gonna read it anyways. Like, this woman took the time to send it to me. I invited her to come on the show. I said, hey, listen, can I get a copy of the book so I can read it? I said, I'd gladly read it and we can discuss it live. And we did just that. And like, it was interesting to see like how vulnerable somebody was, because this is something you're putting out there for the world to see. Like, she's showing full frontal pictures of just all this stuff she's going through, and these scars that she's got look like saw scars is what she said. And the same thing I was thinking too. We were gonna start laughing about that because I was just like, it was rough, man. It was hard to see. Like, holy crap, this poor woman looked like they were sawing her together. They were sewing this woman back together like Leatherface is sewing his faces back together, man. It's like, what the hell? Like, but she'd gone through so much, but then you see her start regaining her confidence as a woman because she starts doing all these different things. And then the more she just starts showing everything, she's bearing it all for you to see. And I thought that was powerful because it's like, damn, dude, it's like you just put this out for the world to see. Like, critics and everybody else are going to see it. You're gonna either deal with, they're gonna hate it or they're gonna love it, with anything that anybody does, obviously, because 90% of the time they just like to complain about shit, and depending on what you're talking about. So that's nothing new there. That's always been there. They always want to cry about how they don't like how the new Minecraft movie turns out or something else. Like, all these things. It's just like everybody's going to have something to say. But even despite all that, she just went ahead and pushed it out anyways and did it anyways. And then it got such a great response. And she said that she had a lot of males reaching out too, which I thought was interesting as well. Because I'm like, hey, now I don't feel like I didn't feel weird in the first place, but now I don't have to feel like I'm the only one that was reading this, that was a dude. But she said it gave such great insight to what people were thinking, or their loved one or somebody else they knew that had gone through that stuff and had a better understanding of things. And I was just like, man, that was pretty amazing. And it was a great experience. Ever since starting this show, I've had some really fun times and really interesting experiences. I even got to interview a Holocaust survivor, so I got to check that off my bucket list right there. I never even thought I'd ever be able to do it if I didn't start the show, but it was so amazing to see this guy. He's in front of us telling his story about some of the craziest things that you probably even heard. He's talking about 10-year-old kids getting thrown in fire pits, and then the ashes coming down, or actual bodies of people, coming down, and all this stuff. And he's in there, and all these different experiences, and he's lost all these people. For him to just say at the end of it all, it's just like everybody loved everyone, and not to let the world have amnesia. So, and he put a lot of time into what he's doing, and it was so powerful because it was just like, wow. He's like 97 years old, and this guy has lived some life. He's been through some crazy stuff, probably some of the most horrific things anybody's ever seen or even read about, and he's right here in front of us telling us about it. And I'm getting to ask him questions, all because I started this one journey. And old Pete would have never done any of this stuff. New Pete, he's been getting to do a lot of cool things lately. I get to be on a lot of different shows, different podcasts, people highlighting me on their podcasts because of what I'm doing is just having and driving a conversation about a topic that not a lot of people are talking about. But now I see so many other people starting these podcasts and adding to the conversation. It makes me excited because it's like, damn, I wonder now how much of that I played into that. Now it's like, hey, is it because of me they started it, or other things like that? And I always support everybody that I see doing those kind of things because it's a hard conversation because you don't know what you're going to come into with some of these people that you meet, and at the same time, my best advice to most people is just go for it, man. Like, why limit yourself to something? Don't say I can't. Just go for it. Like the movie Yes Man. Best illustrates. Like, why not say yes to it? I mean, obviously, let's have limitations of what we say yes to, obviously, but why not? What do you have to lose but to experience something new for yourself?
Yeah, well, if it resonates in your body and in your soul, like you'll know
Yeah,
and follow those threads. And the work that I do is really about, when people are in a very tender and raw space from going through loss. The work that I do is to help create a container or a little bit of scaffolding around somebody so that they can explore and feel
yeah,
safe and also be reflected, and to have somebody sort of mirror their words back to them, and give them space to explore and cultivate that curiosity,
yeah.
um,
And to give them that
which
voice as well too to them, and it's great though. I love what you're doing, honestly. I really do. It's it's so powerful to see, even though everything you've going through, everything you've gone through, that you're still pushing forward to help these people, and you're using your own experiences too. And I think that's what a lot of people relate with you with this, though, that the fact that you're using your own life experiences in this stuff, like, this is the reason I'm doing this, and he's no longer here, but I'm not going to let that stop me from making something happen in the world.
100%. And I mean, it's similar to you. I think the things that we go through in our lives, our lived experience is the most powerful like source or motivator that we can possibly act from. And like for me, and it's, I don't ever encourage people that they should copy anyone. It's all about like looking at people as models and
Yeah.
taking what resonates and leaving the rest. But for me, my husband was a musician, and
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the guitar back there. That's what one of the leading up questions would have been too. Is that his guitar? Did he play?
yeah, I'm in the room that was his studio, and I'm kind of in the process of reclaiming it to be my studio, but also our studio, because I
Yeah,
still feel like he and I collaborate quite a bit. But he was a saxophonist and vocalist. He also played drums. Honestly, the man never met an instrument that he couldn't play.
I love it.
And while he was sick, he continued to tour and perform, and released 2 albums.
Oh,
And
okay. Well,
um,
what are those albums? Go and plug them right here. Let's get those albums out there. Where can we go check out some of his stuff?
on Spotify or iTunes, or Apple Music rather, any of the major streaming platforms, you can find him. His name is James Casey,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the Kauai Project. And there's a Christmas record called "There's a Little Something" or "A Little Something for Everyone."
Okay.
And "A Little Something for Everyone" was pressed to vinyl, and
Oh, that's
every
awesome.
dollar, well, actually they were both pressed to vinyl, but the "Little Something for Everyone" specifically was one of our advocacy projects. And every sale, every proceed goes towards uh, raising funds for colon cancer screenings for
I
people
love
that
it.
are uninsured. And he and I did a lot of work with nonprofits and different companies that are in like the med tech spaces
Yeah.
to really get the word out about early screening and prevention of colorectal cancer, which is unfortunately rising in people under the age of 50. It used to be known as like an old person's disease. And that's just not the case anymore. It's my husband was diagnosed at 38, which is 7 years younger than the recommended screening age. And you know, uh, it's not being caught early enough in young people. It's often being caught at, stage 3 and stage
Yeah.
4, which is much more likely to be terminal than when it's caught at earlier stages, which it's one of the only cancers that is like largely curable when it's caught in those early phases.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think that we're not screening soon enough for a lot of things like that. And it's awesome that all his music is going towards that. And I'll make sure in the YouTube description I get all the links put together, and we'll put all in there. And then on the audio side as well, when it goes to that side, I'll make sure I link to his stuff too. That way people can go check it out and things like that too. So that's so cool though. I love it though. I
Yeah.
love music though. So this is gonna lead to my question. Okay. So I have a friend. She runs the Shit That Goes On in My Head podcast. Okay. So she asked me a question. I'm going to ask you the same thing. If your mental health had a song, what would it be called? What song would it be? What would you say? What song would best represent your mental health?
Oh man,
It's a
that's
great
like a
question, isn't it? It's a great question. I'm telling
is
you.
it that's like a is it this moment, or is it like
You
of
could,
my
however you want to do
lifetime?
it, however you want to do it. You can break it down. There's no wrong answer to the question at all.
Um the answer for today is "Don't Dream It's Over" by Crowded House.
There you go. Okay. So what would you say overall though? I'm just curious now.
Um Overall. Um there's a couple the
There's
the
no wrong
Radiohead
answer.
song,
Yep.
Radiohead "Karma Police."
Yep, I love that song. See, there's no wrong
Um
answer. Like I said, there's no wrong answer to it though. Before and when people ask me, I do the same thing. I'm like, well, let's see. What do you want? You want the anxiety part? Anxiety would be, I can't think of the opening band for what is it? Scott Pilgrim's the Road, the movie. I can't think of what that song is. It's an actual band that plays it, but it's like that's what it's like in my head. It just starts like building up real slow and then just starts getting really louder as it goes, you know. And then the depressive days, it would be Leave a Light On, Talk Away the Dark by Papa Roach, not the Carrie Underwood version. I'm sorry, I don't like that version. No offense to Carrie Underwood, I just don't care for it. I feel like I love the video. The video is very powerful too. He talks about suicide in the beginning and the end of it, mentions the 988 number and everything like that. I think it's such a powerful message, you know, that people just don't know that 98 even exists. You know, you hear people say all these different things about it, but it's like, even if you're not having suicidal, still call, because these guys are trained to handle these things. And I feel like it's such a great song, you know, and it just depends, you know, what my day mood, but because music has a major part in my life, a lot, and my wife's too. She listens to a lot of music. I listen to a lot of music. She listens to a lot of different stuff than I do. I do more like, I'm more rock punk. She's more country, so I do listen to some country stuff here and there, and then she does, you know, rap and things like that. So we have an eclectic group of things we listen to. You know, it's just any kind of day. It depends on what I'm feeling like that day, you know. And in some days, it may sound different. Else, it may just sound really like down in the dumps, but it's not. It's just helping me get through the day. Some days, you know. And I struggle with depression all the time. I don't talk to people, a lot of people about it, because a lot of people don't understand what it's like. A lot of people just tell you to cheer up, and it's like, yeah, it doesn't work like that, unfortunately. So, but I like, you know, I appreciate, you know. And at the same time, I don't want 10,000 people going, "Oh, well, I'm so sorry you feel so down." I'm like, no, I don't want to hear all that. I already feel down. I don't need you to help keep digging the sandcastle on top of me. I need to keep building that sucker. I'm good. Thanks. I could do that myself, you know. And
Honestly, I think that, like, "I'm sorry" is, like, kind of not helpful
yeah,
in
agreed.
these types of conversations. I think, like,
Agree.
what's most helpful is reciprocity, like, just showing up and being open to receive, like, and being present with somebody.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree. I think you're 100% correct. You know, just being there, just listening if they want to talk or somebody calls you, you know, and don't be that person that says, "Oh, call me," and then you don't answer when they need you, because right there you've already lost them. Then you can't say anything after that. If something were to happen, go, "Oh, well, I wish they would have called me." But they did call you. That's the thing. 90% of the time they did call you. You just chose that your problems were bigger than theirs, and all they wanted you to do was to listen to something they had to say, or they had something they're worried about and they just wanted to get it out there, you know, just have somebody tell them that, hey, listen, you know, you're just, this is just being silly, you know. And then they start to realize the same thing once it comes out of their head and they hear it, you know, they start thinking the same thing. Oh, okay, well, that's just, you know, something my head made up. But, you know, I think that's the best message I can tell people, because I've talked to several people where they've said that they've reached out to somebody who's made that same statement, and then they've just completely shut them down. And it's crazy, because it's like, these people are talking to you. And if you look at the statistic wise, if they're males, you're really lucky they're talking to you, because males don't talk about as much as females do. They just commit, you know, and things like that. And it's a scary number that keeps going up. And it's like, we got to do something about this now. And, you know, we need to start having these conversations more often, you know, even if it's just asking you people, how's your mental health doing today, or just any kind of conversation. Hey, how you doing today? And just checking in with people, or call that friend you haven't seen in a while. That's a powerful thing too. Just calling them, letting them know that you know they're there. A lot of times you could save somebody's life and not even realize it, because then they feel like they're present in your life at some point, or you're thinking of them, you know, and they won't feel like they're just, nobody notices them, or they're a burden, you know, things like that. All these different thoughts that go through people's heads, you know. And it's just, it's hard to tell what a lot of people think too, you know. And that's the great thing about the shows, though, that you get people's open innermost thoughts that come out, and people get a little more. So a lot of people realize that they can relate to some of these people and go, hey, listen, I agree with so and so, you know, or these other people that, you know, they come on here and they share these stories, because it's powerful. You know, everybody has a story, you know. It's like, are you willing to share it? Because some people aren't, you know. And I respect that. You know, I've asked people to be on the show that respectfully said they don't want to talk about it again. But, you know, other people that do tend to come on here, and they feel so empowered, because now it's out there for everybody to hear. It's not even hidden anymore. It's not like they have to hide and carry this weight around with them and things like that. And that's the great thing, is that, you know, that just the great thing is just having a conversation. Is like, you'll find out a lot more than you would think you would in most people.
Well, it really just sort of translates the humanness that we all
Hmm.
have, and it brings us together in ways that, you know, in a lot of ways our society kind of isolates us.
Yeah.
And I think that is so important, especially when people are going through hard things, is to feel relatable, or to feel like what they're going through, to feel seen in what they're going
Yeah.
through, and that someone else is going through something too. And there was something that struck a chord when you were speaking about, when, you know, like, if you say, call me if you need something and you don't answer. um how that's, kind of an ultimate betrayal. But
Yeah.
there was one other thing that I wanted to highlight that's really tied into grief, but also mental health, is when people say, like, "What can I do for you?" And a lot of times when you're going through such an intense experience, like, and you like, I mean, I've had situations or times or whatever where like I don't even know how to eat
Yeah.
because the things that are going on in my internal world are so big and heavy and loud that like I can't even like do something simple like figure out what to put inside my body for sustenance.
Yeah.
So to have someone come to you, and I know it's coming from a good intention, but it's not helpful, which is their intention is to be
Yeah.
helpful, to say like what can I do to help? Like come with some suggestions, like
Yeah.
give them some choices. Like say, would it be helpful for me to go to the grocery store for you? Would it be helpful for me to, I don't know, like run a couple errands for you? Would it be
Yeah.
helpful for me to bring by dinner next, on Tuesday? Um, Having options can also like even if it's not those three options, it gives them a place to start imagining what form help could arrive in.
Yeah, I think it's really good too because you start a conversation about it, and maybe they don't need anything, so they'll tell you what they need. They're like, hey, listen, how about this instead? I need this, and I think that's a better approach. Honestly, I feel like it's overused, just like I'm sorry is overused. It's like you could say you're sorry, but are you really sorry though? And a lot of people start thinking that too. It's like if you keep saying you're sorry for a lot of things. It's like, okay, well, are you just saying sorry to say you're sorry about my loss? Or you just, you know what I mean? Like that internal dialogue will start happening. I think that's a great point, though, is to start the conversation like that. Come with some ideas because it means you put some thought into it. At least you're like, hey, listen, how about you need some of these things? I think it tells them too, as well as that you're thinking about them at the same time. You've been really thinking about the situation and different things that you could do for them. Versus them having to make them think about it. They're dealing with this horrific event. They don't want to think about that stuff. They just, they want to be either sometimes just left alone to their own thoughts, or the fact that you come in and come from that approach, I think it's a better approach myself too, because I think it's way better. You give a couple suggestions and then let them respond with what they think is what they need in return, and things like that, which is great as well.
Yeah, totally. And also it's like it shows that you're actually willing, that you actually want to come and do something. A lot
Right.
of times it's like people feel bad asking for something, like,
Yeah.
or like, am I asking for too much? If I say like this would be helpful for me, whatever this is, like, but if someone says that they're willing to go to the grocery store or like pick up your mail or whatever it is, then you have a baseline for like what would be an acceptable ask.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you'll get a better idea when they start responding to what it is you can offer next, and always be ready to answer. It's like with other things too, you can come up with it based on what they're saying as well. Don't just keep the conversation going. At least let them know you're actually putting thought into the conversation. You're not just coming in and giving a generic answer to everything. Because like that's why I did the whole thing with, hey, how's your mental health? Is the whole thing I start saying. A lot of people say because of me now is because think about it. If I come up to you and said, hey, how you doing? You can say, okay, and that's it. Conversation ends. But if you ask them that question, it makes them stop and think for a minute because they'll be like, wait, what are you asking me? Why are you asking me that? And then you can go jump into the conversation and get a little deeper and be like, I've just noticed you're kind of a little off, or there's something, you seem like something's wrong. I'm just making sure you're good, just doing a temperature check to see how you're going, and things like that too. It unlocks the conversation even further. And that was the other thing too. It was making me laugh. A lot of times people kept saying, well, Pete versus anxiety always says this, so now I'm going to say it too. And they just kept like, you kept tagging me in these videos where they were talking about it. And it felt great because all it is, I'm just changing the way we look at things. Like, like you were saying, like, hey, what can I do for you? I just flipped it on its head and said, let's go from a different approach. Let's try this instead and see what happens, And I've asked somebody that before, and I got two response. I got one guy, he just went completely berserk. He was just like, why are you asking me these questions? I'm like, it's just a question I ask people because like I could ask if you're how you're doing all day, get a one word answer, but that one actually makes you think about it, and you have to actually give me more of a okay response kind of thing. You got to give me something to work with here, and then I can jump in the conversation from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that having a place to start from is just so important.
Yeah. So all
Absolutely.
right, well, we're gonna start wrapping up. It was great having you, and it's Ayla, right? I swear to God, I'm gonna get your name right. I promise.
You got it. You got it. That's
Ayla? Okay, I got it. Okay, all right, cool. I was like, I'm sitting here thinking about it all the time. Like, damn, how do I say this person's name? She told me. Anyway, Ayla, go ahead and plug all your. I know you have your website, all that kind of stuff. Do you want to plug where everybody can find you, in case they want to donate? I know you have a Substack as well, too, right?
I do. I do. You can find me. My website is www.alchemyforhumanhearts.com, and I have a book that you can download for free. It's called The Little Book to Remember, and
Awesome.
it's all the things that we've been talking about on this podcast about how you can tap in and start to listen and hear when things in your life are really loud, when you're going through grief, when you're going through a major life rupture or transition. It is a collection of living practices that are backed by research, but that I use and rely on in my life regularly as I walk this path. And if you're interested in any of my other offerings, you can find those on my website. And if you want to learn more about me, please check out my Substack, also under Alchemy for Human Hearts. And my Instagram is Ayla C. Casey. And I look forward to meeting you all and seeing this episode out in the wild. Thank you, Pete. I really appreciate it.
No, appreciate you so much for coming. I appreciate you coming to talk to me and everything. I think it was great. I will have everything down below in the comment section, right in the video description, guys, for you. Anybody that's watching this, I'll have all the links to everything so you can get to her. If you're on the audio side listening to this, I'll have all the links in there as well. That way you guys can reach out to her if you want to, just say hi, tell her you heard her on the show, donate to the cause and everything else. And I'll have all the, hubby's music and thing, all of it, and we're going to get it all together, but put it all in there. That way you guys can go check it out, tell her how much you enjoy it, put it in your playlists and all the kind of stuff. And as I always say, it costs absolutely nothing to be kind to nobody. One kind act can save somebody's life, or you can save somebody's day. You guys know where to find me on Pete vs. Anxiety. I'm on X through TikTok. I'm all the way down to iHeartRadio from Spotify, guys. And as I always say, and I always sign off as, I'm Pete vs. Anxiety saying, don't ask how your day is. Say, hey, how's your mental health today?